This is Due South on WUNC News. I'm Leoneda Inge. Did you know the Halifax Resolves in North Carolina was the first formal sanction of American independence, adopted in April 1776?
All of the privileges, all of the freedoms that we have got their start somewhere, and the Halifax Resolves is a part of that story.
More on that historic story coming up. And we bring you best-selling author Tayari Jones and her book Kin, live at Flyleaf Books.
You on a wild goose chase, you going on a road trip in a rundown car with some people you don't really know. Y'all end up staying in a sharecropping whorehouse for 8 weeks. That's interesting.
America at 2:50 and Southern storytelling at its best on Due South. The news is next. For Hi there. I'm Leoneda Inge, host of Due South. Thanks for listening and supporting our podcasts. We work smart to bring you the best North Carolina and the South have to offer, from the latest in state politics to important voices in race and Southern culture. Due South is here every day. But we couldn't do it without your financial support. Thank you. If you like what you're hearing, please consider making a donation today at WUNC.org. From the studios of WUNC News in Chapel Hill, this is Due South. I'm Leoneda Inge. One book and one author who has again made an impact on the literary world in 2026 is Kin by Tayari Jones. Let's get that name right. Tayari.
Mm-hmm. Rhymes with Ferrari and Atari.
That's good.
And Safari.
Kin has gotten a lot of attention. It was an Oprah's book club selection, a New York Times book club choice, and Due South got the chance to dig deep into what makes Tayari Jones tick. She says Kin, a story set in the Deep South about two black girls yearning for family, needed to be told. And the book came to Jones at a pivotal time in her life, healing her belief in what stories can do.
I did get sick, and that did kind of stop me from writing. But more than even my health problems was that I had kind of a creative crisis. In 2020, just think about it, that was when
pandemic time
was happening, George Floyd. I was really saying, what is it that a book can do for the world? Am I going to go to a hospital and heal somebody with a novel? Am I going to throw a book at someone, that's injuring someone else? I didn't see what the point was. And I think that really gave me a kind of writer's block. I had never had writer's block. I didn't even really believe writer's block was a real thing until it happened to me. And I believe that when I got sick, I got diagnosed with Graves' disease and I was in the hospital, all of that. And I do feel in many ways that writing this novel, I kind of wrote myself back to health.
Tayari Jones wrapped up her book tour in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. A standing room-only crowd at Flyleaf Books got to learn more about Kin and the need to have conversations with women of a certain age. My conversation with Tayari Jones was recorded at Flyleaf Books, April 2nd, 2026. Tayari, we're both Southern women. That's why I'm so addicted. Because we're Southern women, I guess of a certain generation. You're from Atlanta. I'm from actually Mobile, Alabama. And we both attended historically black colleges and universities. And I just wonder, how much did your upbringing actually inspire Kin? Now, I know you can write anything. You have proven that to us. And we love how it all comes back home to Atlanta, right? But how much of yourself did you have to put, or not just even yourself, maybe your aunties, and as, quote, your kin, maybe folks that have whispered in your ear all your life and it just poured out of you this time?
Well, first, everybody, thank y'all for coming. This is actually the last stop in this 25-city thing I'm doing. So I'm so happy to wrap it up right here. You know, it's been a long road, but it's been such a nourishing road to connect with readers. And I'm so grateful to my publisher for giving me so many tour stops in the South. So often writers, you write a book, they just want to send you to New York, up and down, the Eastern Seaboard. But it's so important for me to be doing this at home. It was important to me that I write this book at home because I used to live in New York. I was living in New York because that's where publishing was. And I thought I needed to be up there to make my career. And when I was up north, I always knew that New Yorkers are like they're born, not made. I never felt like a New Yorker. And I feel like the South is so misunderstood up there. Like when I lived in New York, they acted like I got to Brooklyn on the Underground Railroad. And so I wanted to come home and write, a true story of the South as I know it to be.
And they act like it's not 49 other states.
Well, they act even like the whole rest of New York in the city. And because I do think that when northern people are provincial, people don't call it that, right? Like they can proudly say, I've never left New York. And no one tells them, oh, you need to get out more. But if you were to say, oh, I've never left North Carolina or I've never left Alabama, people would think your world is small. Mm-hmm. And our worlds are large. And that's always been part of the mission of my work is to write about the sheer breadth and wonder and scope of our Southern lives. That said, this is the only time I've ever written a book where I felt like the book snuck up on me. Because I thought I was going to write something. I'd like to write books about the modern day. That's what I think of that as kind of my mission is to write, the story of the world that I know. And that's what I've always done quite happily. And I had a contract to write a book about the world that I know. And for whatever reason, I couldn't make it happen. It wasn't
good for us.
It wasn't moving like it. I felt like I had like a hammer, nails, a saw, and I was making noise when I was supposed to be making music. And I had to just let the story come to me. And that's how I ended up writing about these two girls in the 1950s growing up in a small town. And I thought, well, maybe these are the parents of the people I'm supposed to be writing about. Because these characters, are my mother's era. Mm-hmm. But when I got about 150 pages in, I had to accept that this is not the backstory. This is the real story. And I just had to kind of go with it. But you know how I feel writing a novel is a lot like being in love. You know how when you're in love, you're just busy being in love. You're just carried away by it. You can't say why you're doing what you're doing, but you just got to do what you're doing. And you think it's mysterious. It's above you. It's it's motivated by your heart, this mysterious thing that you can't understand and you shouldn't understand. That's how it felt writing this book. But I feel like just like being in love, when you are no longer in love, you can look back on your behavior and have some theories as to why. And that is the answer to this. I look back on this book and I can see why I wrote it. I moved back home to Atlanta because I wanted to be closer to my parents. They're in their 80s. And I wanted to be closer to them, not just to take care of them, though I do, but I want to get to know my mother as two grown women. Like me and Mama, we are two grown women now. Because when I lived elsewhere, I come home to visit, I would be sleeping in my childhood bedroom. Mm-hmm. And, there's stuffed animals in there. There's only so much grown woman conversation people can do when one party is sleeping in a room where there are stuffed animals. So I move home. I have my own house, no stuffed animals. And I wanted, even in the book, the character, her aunt pours a drink and say, okay, finally, we can talk like grown women. Yes. And I thought my mama was going to do that. And I realized that is merely my fantasy. My mama has no desire to be two grown women. She's like, you better get in there with them stuffed animals. And I feel like on some level, this book, it's me having the conversation with that generation, whether they want to or not.
Mm. So I have to ask you, has your mother read this book or listened to, folks have told me, the lovely audiobook version of this book? What did she?
Oh, my mother, she read this book. She enjoyed this book. She don't want to talk about this book. She's not mad about it. That's just not how she is. And that's the thing I think you have to realize. You cannot make somebody have a conversation with you they don't want to have.
No.
And so I think I just wanted to write this book to say, what was it like coming of age in the 50s? What was it like coming of age against the backdrop of the civil rights movement? Because all the things we think about, they thought about. They just may not talk to us about it, but everything, work, love, sexuality, all of these things, friendship, they felt these things as deeply as we do. Like, I think every generation feels like we invented humanity. Like, we think don't you think every generation thinks they invented sex? They think everybody else before them were hatched from eggs, and then we came up with this novel idea. But so I'm kind of just filling in the blanks and answering my own questions.
You brought up Underground Railroad. I know some of your Spelman sisters are here. I saw a few shirts out there. And
I
friends.
see that.
So one part of the book I definitely I enjoyed just the mention of how one of the dorm rooms on the first floor, 104, it wasn't just a regular, it was the Underground Railroad. So I wondered, did you take the Underground Railroad when you lived in the dorm? Did you sneak out?
We had a curfew when I was at Spelman, but in the 50s, when the novel was set, the curfew was 6 p.m., y'all. The sun was still out. Like, we would be out, it would be too late now. And so, and if you live in a situation where there is a curfew for girls, one, you have to bond with other people, because if you're going to circumvent that curfew, somebody's going to have to open that door for you. Someone else is going to have to put themselves in harm's way to help you, to help facilitate your good time. Mm-hmm. See, that's friendship. And so there's a room on the first floor of Abbey Hall where you could sneak in more effectively. And they used to call that room, that window, we called the Underground Railroad, because you could sneak in the house, sneak in the dorm, and whoever lived in that room was known as the conductor.
Yes. I don't think you said that you used the Underground Railroad during your curfew years. I don't.
This is off subject. When I was there, also the curfew was midnight, and for a young lady on weekdays, so a young lady with my background, that didn't feel like any kind of curfew at all. You could be out till midnight on a weeknight. I was like, where is the curfew in the room with us? Because I don't see it.
Coming up, more of my conversation with best-selling Southern novelist Tayari Jones at Flyleaf Books in Chapel Hill. You're listening to Due South. I'm Leoneda Inge. Welcome back to Due South. I'm Leoneda Inge. Kin by Tayari Jones debuted as a New York Times bestseller in 2026. The Southern tale of two young black girls taking different paths to find family and a future has captivated reading circles, from Oprah's book club to WUNC's virtual book club. I had the chance to interview Tayari Jones on Due South and at Flyleaf Books in Chapel Hill. The award-winning novelist talked candidly to a full house at Flyleaf about the love of her main characters, Annie, who has traveled to Memphis in search of her mother, and Nisi, who is searching for home in Atlanta at Spelman College. This conversation was recorded live at Flyleaf Books, April 2nd, 2026.
So Annie goes off to Memphis because she has heard through the grapevine that her biological mother is there. And she climbs out the window of her grandmother's house and, goes on this, this grand adventure. So while their lives were very different, I don't know whose life is richer because, that is a very rich experience to climb out the window, get in a car with this dude named
with
Clyde.
The man that you thought was your man is not your man.
I know,
that was
but
very problematic.
yeah. When you're 17, what's your man? Who knows? You're teenagers. And you go for a wild goose chase, and all they have to guide them is the Green Book, which is the book for Black travelers that tells you where it's safe to stay. Now, the fine print of the Green Book is the Green Book tells you if a place is safe. That's it. Anything else? That's all they're telling you. This is safe. They're not telling you if it's nice, if it's reputable. They're just saying that you will survive the night. Everything else is up to you. So they go on this, just the uncertainty and the fun of it. So Niecy takes kind of a safer route. It's a more privileged route. But, you're on a wild goose chase. You going on a road trip in a rundown car with some people you don't really know. Y'all end up staying in a sharecropping whorehouse for 8 weeks. That's interesting.
Definitely interesting. I don't think I would have been there because if Clyde had a woman in that front seat, I would have beat his ass and I wouldn't have gone. I would have never gotten to Memphis.
No, because she wanted to go to Memphis. And that's the thing too, like even as a very young person, keeping one's eyes on the prize. And also for me in writing a novel, I feel like you have to separate like what your ideal self would do and what a real person would do.
That's why I'm a journalist and not a novelist.
You've been waiting your whole life to maybe meet your biological mother, and you have a ride to get there. Yeah, and you take it. You take it.
The civil rights movement, it was so clever. The way that you just really introduced Vernice to something that she definitely wasn't aware of. But just the back and forth, like I thought I was sitting, in the front of the back, not the back of the front. Like she didn't even know what she was doing. But it kind of gave her some street credibility once she got to Atlanta.
Well, I think a lot of people, the nature of resistance, right? Mm-hmm. We often think of the civil rights movement as these grand moments of resistance, like Mrs. Parks was part of a resistance organization and they decided that she would not give up her seat on the bus this particular day. But people were constantly negotiating ways to find dignity in a system that is undignified. And Vernice decides that she knows she's going to travel to school on a segregated bus, but she wants to sit in the frontmost seat that is allowed to her. But the way that how the bus seats can be toggled, so instead of being like this, they're kind of like that. And so she's unsure what the line is unclear because just like the nature of segregation and racism is arbitrary and ridiculous and unclear. And so she accidentally sits in the wrong part of the bus and becomes kind of an accidental activist in this. But the question too is even if you did not mean to make that particular statement, if you suffer the consequences of it, are you not still a hero or not? Like, how much is your choice or intention, is it as important as the result? And I feel like many of us live in these kind of gray areas. I don't like to write about heroes necessarily. I like to write about real people trying to figure it out.
Well, that was very special to me, just this accidental activist. And it took her new Spelman sisters to say, well, guess what you did? Now I'll talk to you. Now you've done something. Now you're worthy.
Well, it happened once she met them, so it's not like they had a time when they weren't talking to her.
I know.
I'm like, you are not going to undermine our sisterhood up in here. Not in this month of April, our Founders Month. April 11th is right around the corner, in which we celebrate our sacred sisterhood. So
I was trying to make her.
But I feel like she got there, and then it became this thing to say, oh, that's the one who wouldn't get off the bus.
I know.
And she felt like, well, kind of, well, yeah, and it gives her, don't you think we all went to school and found out something about ourselves that made us special that we didn't know about? Like when I went to college for the first time, people said, "Oh, aren't you the one that likes to write?" And I was like, why, yes. It was my first, it's like at college, the rules are different. Like when you're in high school, there's a very narrow way of being consequential as a high school student. But when you get to college, it's the first time that you, particularly as a young lady, that there are many ways that people can know who you are.
You can remake yourself.
Yes.
You can pretend to be, well, you can be whoever you want. That's what I liked about it.
Yeah, you can become someone new. So she goes there. I really enjoyed writing about that time of her, the wonder.
Yes.
Of being like almost grown. Almost grown is the sweet spot, right? You're grown enough, but you're not quite grown, so you can get some help.
I want to talk about the letters and your choice in bridging stories that way. How important? Well, we know it's not like they had a cell phone or anything else to communicate. You had to write it down and make sure you had an address and that you found a place where people could write you back. A lot had to go into getting a letter to someone and then hoping to get a response.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about now, we have this expectation of instant communication.
Yes.
Like if someone doesn't text you back in 5 minutes, do you or do you not have an attitude?
They're gone.
You saw that. But when people were writing in the 50s, people would write letters and you would wait. And also as a device in a novel, it was a lot of fun to think about. It was a lot of fun to look at the life one is living and then the way that one reports one's life in a letter. So when Annie is over there having to live in this sharecropping whorehouse in Mississippi, when she finally gets the stamp and everything to write her grandmother, she says, "I've met a very nice woman. She owns her own business. We are staying at her place."
She's like, "How dare you? Wait a minute. You did not say goodbye. You're forgetting the good stuff." Both of them actually were upset they didn't put the good stuff in the letter. They're like, you think somebody's going to read the letter?
Yeah, you write a letter, and then you have to wait for them to write you back. And also, as a novelist, don't you think you can cover time in a different way? You can do it because without a letter, it doesn't make sense to have a 3-page synopsis, of what all happens. But in a letter, it's realistic that someone would provide a synopsis of their life.
Are you a letter writer? Were you a letter writer?
I am a letter writer. I love to write letters. I even belong to pen pal societies. I write to people I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
I know. When I was a little girl, I had, they would, I don't know if they do that with children anymore. They would assign us a pen pal, took it very seriously.
I had a pen pal in Trinidad, actually.
And then when I was 12 years old, my parents moved to West Africa for reasons of their own. And as a child, as a child, you have to go where they go.
Right.
So I wrote to my little friends every day. And it wasn't until I had been there 3 months that I received a first response, because think about it, the letter had to get all the way back to Atlanta. Then my little friends had to say, "This is odd. What do you do when someone sends you a letter?" And their mother had to say, "Oh, you write them back." And they had to say, "Okay." So then they write back, and then they have to get all the way back to me. And I just remember that day. But I did it for the pleasure of the writing, because I didn't have expectation of getting anything back, because I didn't know how it worked. And one day, each class has a student that's kind of almost like the class president. They call that person the prefect. The prefect came in with a shoebox full of letters for me from all my friends. They all came at once. And after that, I was hooked on my life as a letter writer.
So there was no question you were going to include that in this particular book? What made you do it?
This book was so mysterious because of the way it came to me. I never had a book come to me before. I didn't believe people who would say, "Oh, this book just came to me. I'm just a vessel." I'm like, "Are you really? You're a vessel?" Okay. Because I thought they were just trying to seem interesting. But it actually happened to me with this one. Like I felt like this story came through me in the form that it wanted to come. And it was very humbling for me to just kind of almost like shut up and write it. Like I had to just allow that kind of humility. So when they started writing letters, I was like, okay, I guess we're writing letters.
I forget, did you start writing this book during the pandemic, before? I
was trying to write during the pandemic, but I couldn't. It felt like during the pandemic, I lost, in many ways, my faith in fiction. and that, we have this terrible disease. 1 million Americans have died. We had the George Floyd protests, all of that. I felt like, and where does fiction fit in with this, with these urgent matters? To what goal, to what end, to what assistance is fiction? And it just didn't feel like what I should be doing. And I finally came to the feeling of fiction is what I have. It was given to me for a reason. And I think sometimes God gives you gifts and you have to use it because it is what you have been given. And it's not because you have any grand ideas about the meaning of it. You just have to trust a plan that is larger than yourself. And if I'm meant to write these stories, I'm going to do my best and write the best story I can write. It may not change the world, but it is my offering, and I have to honor it by doing my best.
Well, before we have to open it up to you all, I know there's so many questions out there. Just talk about motherhood, because that was definitely present all the way through in the beginning. I think that's why I have to keep putting the book down, because it's like, I don't want to think about my mother. I don't want to think about my aunties. I don't want to think about any of this right now. I say, where's my book? Let me keep reading to see what happens next. But I mean, just to begin a story, I don't know how many of you all were just like, really? 2 motherless girls from the get-go? Like, you hit us in the stomach early, Tayari. You did.
I think this book is kind of funny. Who's read it already? It's kind of funny, right? This book, a lot of funny things happen to these people. Yeah, this book is kind of funny. There's so many. Bobo is funny.
Oh, a lot of people love Bobo.
Baby Doll is funny.
She's looking at there.
Lulabelle is funny. There's a lot of funny people in this book. I feel that, I think because the book, because it's set during Jim Crow era, people are like, oh no, but it's very important to me to capture
with death.
To capture all
murder.
I'm sorry, are we trying to sell this book or not?
Oh. I know.
I'm just saying, but I do think there's this expectations of books by African Americans to be stories of tragedy. There is this expectation that your story is one of woe. And I really try to write a complex story. So our girls are motherless, which to me gives it a kind of almost like a fable-like quality. And that's what bonds them, is because the 2 of them don't have their mothers. And so they have this thing in common, and they are marked as, those are the 2 motherless babies. And it makes them a community of 2 and a friendship. And Annie, her mother has run off. And so she lives her whole life with the hope, one day I'll see my mother. And one of the questions I'm interested in is, what is the utility of hope? Because on the one hand, we think of hope, as it's a positive virtue. But as one of the characters says, Annie wakes up every morning hopeful, but she goes to bed every night disappointed. Where Nisi, her mother's died before she was born. And so she knows that she'll never see her mother, so she's not searching for that specific person. She's searching for that mother role, but she doesn't have it tied to one person. So I feel like Annie, if you imagine Annie, she's sitting at a beautiful table and it's set for dinner and there's a seat beside her, and she says, no one can sit at this seat because this is my mother's seat. And then she goes so far to say, and nobody else can eat till my mother gets here. That's because because she doesn't want to almost like cheat on the idea of her mother by allowing someone to sit in this seat. And it made me think about our own lives and our own mothers. Even if we have our mothers, motherhood is a role that we so romanticize and fantasize about. Are we comparing our real life mothers to this imaginary mother? This imaginary mother that knows you so well and is there for you when you're unhappy. And how can a real life person live up to the fantasy? So it's really also a story about learning to feel the love that is right there in front of you and not hold out for someone that doesn't even exist.
You mentioned Bobo. So now we have to go, really just moving from the relationships with mothers and women. And I wonder how many of you, I was trying to get as far away from my mother I think, early on. And then I guess when I went off to college, I was like calling her every day. She was like, goodness, you act like I breastfed you or something. I mean, she was like, what happened? And, so that's when you mention, this fantasy, what people dream about what a mother should be. And sometimes you have something and you don't even know it. We're going to go to Bobo. So, was there a character that you just kept rooting for the entire time, Tayari, in the book? Especially when you think of these love relationships that were growing.
I like all the characters. I cannot write about characters if I don't like them because I have to spend so much time with them that I can't spend. I only have one character in this book that I kind of dislike, and he's got a very small role because I just got to spend too much time with him. Who's
that?
The bar owner, Mr. Wilson. Yeah. But other than that, I like all the people, and I want things to work out for my characters. But I had fun. I had so much fun writing the men in this book because I believe that Southern Black Americans are masters of language. And the further removed people are from power, the more they play games and twist the language and make new words and new expressions. And of the Black people who are, I think, most colorful and interesting, Black men are fantastic with the words. They are so good with the language, with the expression. So with Bobo and all his vocabulary words that he uses side by side with the more vernacular language, I had a lot of fun with that. I had fun with Mr. Daniel, the other bar owner, and all of his off-the-cuff formality, yet very Southern, very Black. I just had a great time with the way the men talk to each other and the way they relate to women, and the idea of the way people try to be gentlemen, even though they're in a culture and a moment in history that doesn't want them to be gentle, they try to be courtly in their own ways. And I just had such fun with that. And also writing about all this, like 1950s va-va-voom, people were enjoying themselves in that way as well. And I had just writing those love plots was just a pleasure and a delight. And you can't have a love plot in a story without having some heartbreak.
True. That's true. Well, thank you for all of it. The love, the heartbreak, the semi-trauma, the beautiful characters. And we love Ken. That's why everybody's here. So let's give Tayari Jones an applause.
Thank you.
That was New York Times bestselling author Tayari Jones at the last stop on her latest book tour, wrapping up at Flyleaf Books in Chapel Hill. That book is Ken. If you would like to read this interview along with the Tayari Jones Due South interview, please get the summer 2026 edition of Southern Cultures. The quarterly journal is published by UNC Press for the Center for the Study of the American South. More Due South after the break. I'm Leoneda Inge.
Welcome back. It's Due South on listener-supported WUNC News. I'm Jeff Tabiri. The 250th birthday celebration of our nation has, understandably, revolved around the adoption of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Here in North Carolina, there is another day from that year that is perhaps just as important. On April 12, 1776, North Carolina became the first colony to formally call for independence from Great Britain. This call for freedom came to be known as the Halifax Resolves, and that date, April 12, 1776, is commemorated on our state flag. And for many of you, it's on your license plate, and it reads, "First in Freedom." Here to tell us more about the Halifax Resolves and its influence on the 13 colonies months before the Declaration of Independence was signed is Carl Burke. He's the site manager at Historic Halifax, one of our state's historic sites. Carl Burke, welcome to Due South.
Thank you.
All right, set the scene, please. Late 1775 into 1776, colonial North Carolina. What battles are being waged at this time? What's on the mind of citizens and delegates to the provincial Congress?
The problems with Britain are top of mind. In February of 1776, there is a Patriot victory at the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge. The victory there stopped the Highland Scots from reaching Wilmington and uniting with the rest of the British forces. And that victory really helped to fan the flames of revolution in North Carolina. And we believe that helped spur on some action in the Fourth Provincial Congress, which met here in Halifax in the spring of 1776. And by the morning of April 12th, there were 83 delegates that were present here in Halifax. And they had appointed a committee to look into the usurpations and violences attempted and committed by the king and parliament. And this committee put forth a resolution, which we now call the Halifax Resolves, and it lays out all of these issues and problems that were really coming to a head at that time. And also, it goes a step further. It authorizes the three delegates, it authorizes North Carolina's delegates, which there were three, in the Continental Congress in Philadelphia to vote in favor of independence, along with the delegates of the other colonies. So the resolves showed that North Carolina, the people of North Carolina, were in favor of the Halifax Resolves. These 83 delegates that were here in Halifax were from all over North Carolina. The counties of North Carolina of the day had representatives, and even the larger towns had separate representatives. And all totaled, by April 12th, there were 83 here. So that's a good representative number for that time, and for the really an entire colony.
So you mentioned the 83. I want to get to the components and some of the main provisions of the resolves in a moment. But first, why Halifax? Why do these 83 delegates convene in this place about an hour and a half northeast of what is today downtown Raleigh?
Well, Raleigh didn't exist at the time. So Raleigh was not the capital. The capital at the time was wherever the royal governor's residence or royal governor's location was, and that would be New Bern at the time, Tryon Palace. The provincial congresses were not approved by the king or parliament, and so they were kind of a rogue legislative body. So they really couldn't meet where the king, where the king's representative was, where the royal governor was.
Okay.
So they had to move them around, and they were held in various colonial towns. And it just worked out that these issues were coming to a head when it was kind of Halifax's turn to host one of these. It might have been somewhat inevitable that Halifax would host at least one. It did host two. It hosted the Fourth and the Fifth Provincial Congress. And so we're lucky that it happened here. And had they met somewhere else for the Fourth Provincial Congress, we might be calling the Halifax Resolves something else. But Halifax was a prominent town. It was a sizable town. It was a port town. It was at the intersection of major roads. And so you had a lot of people coming into Halifax. It was large enough that it could host 83 delegates from all over the place. There were enough maybe taverns or rooms in private homes that these individuals could rent during their time here.
We are chatting with Carl Burke, who is site manager at Historic Halifax. I would also note, I believe, that Halifax sits on or very close to the Roanoke River. So it's a center. I mean, you mentioned it's a port. So, all right. The Halifax Resolves transpire on April 12th, 1776. What is the top line? What are the most notable provisions or major pillars of this document?
Well, similar to the Declaration of Independence, they lay out some of the grievances that the colonists have with the king and with Parliament. And so the format is similar. But the crux of the Halifax Resolves is it states that the delegates in the Continental Congress be empowered to concur with the delegates of the other colonies in declaring independency. So that is the big thing.
The
it's
heart
an
of it.
Authorization for our delegates to vote in favor of independence. And our delegates in Philadelphia had kind of asked for direction.
Yeah.
What do you want us to do? The Continental Congress took a break, and a lot of the delegates went back to their respective colonies and to find out what was going on. And so this was an answer to that question. And it's written about basically like a 3-page letter.
In essence, no, I hear you. I just want to make sure that I've got it right. But in essence, this is the administrative starting point. This is states' rights, or in this case, colonies beginning to come together to say, all right, we're going to put our arms around this thing. This isn't necessarily talking about amendments or particular, I don't even know, particular provisions for the country. This is maybe that not very important, but incremental first step. Is that a fair way to think about it?
I think so, and it's really, it's putting forth the idea that the colonies can come together and declare themselves independent, which of course was done in the Declaration of Independence. So the Halifax Resolves helped lead to the Declaration of Independence. Independence, though, of course, had to be won after a war. So yeah, it's a first step.
So Halifax Resolves are approved on April 12th, and then a few months later, the Declaration of Independence is enacted. And of course, from the Declaration of Independence, there are several famous lines and well-known, just very well-known passages. Is there one from this document that is well-known to you?
Well, of course, the authorization that the delegates be empowered to concur with the delegates of the other colonies in declaring independency is the big standout. They also talk about the rights of the individual colonies to form foreign alliances and to protect themselves but I think the most notable one is the authorization to vote for independence.
Carl Burke with us here on Due South. If you would, I want you to start. Dot A is April 12th. Dot B is July 4th. This is less than 3 months. What transpires after the Halifax Resolves as we think about other colonies getting in line? When and where? Just how does that all come about?
Virginia passes a similar resolution the next month, in May. And so that shows that they are on board as well. The Virginia resolution and the Halifax Resolves were both presented on the same day in the Continental Congress. But we all know, of course, that April comes before May, so North Carolina gets to say that it is first. And of course, the Continental Congress continues to deliberate, but as more of the states start coming on board, they start to realize that declaring independence might be possible, and then eventually realize that they have the votes to do so, and so eventually the end result is the Declaration of Independence.
The Fourth Provincial Congress adopts the Halifax Resolves, and I want to note, unless you tell me I'm mistaken here. It was a unanimous vote, which is, I think, noteworthy, if nothing else. Possible throwaway question here, but the interested in esoteric history part of me is intrigued or wondering if there was anyone who signed the Halifax Resolves and then also, 3 months or less, signed the Declaration of Independence. Any dual signers there?
No, there were no dual signers. Our three North Carolina delegates to the Continental Congress were William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, and John Penn. Now, they were not delegates to the Fourth Provincial Congress.
Got it. Okay.
But the Halifax Resolves may have actually been taken back to Philadelphia by one of those three delegates. If not, then it was sent to them, dispatched to them, delivered to them. There is one signer of the Halifax Resolves, and that was James Green Jr., who was the secretary of the Fourth Provincial Congress. His signature was on the back, almost like you endorse a check. His signature showed that the document was legitimate, that it had come from the Fourth Provincial Congress.
Just one,
so
James Green Jr.
83 didn't sign it.
Wow. Oh, that's fascinating. Only one signer to the Halifax Resolves, James Green Jr. Where is the 3-page document, the Halifax Resolves, today?
So this standalone document that was sent to North Carolina's delegates in the Continental Congress in Philadelphia eventually made its way into the records and documents from the Continental Congress. So it is part of the collection of the National Archives and Records Administration in Washington, D.C. But the document is currently on display in Halifax. We have borrowed it from the National Archives for a period of 6 months. It's been on display since April, and when our museum opened, and it will be here through October 6th on view in our museum. And so we're very proud to have this important document, this foundational document, back in Halifax. As far as we know, this is the first time it has been back to Halifax since the day it was written, now more than 250 years ago. We were told by the National Archives folks that the last time the document was on public view was in the 1950s. So there are a lot of people who have never seen the original document. So this is a rare opportunity.
100%, myself included. I have until, and our listeners have until October 6th to get to Halifax to see the Halifax Resolves. I've only got a couple of more moments here with Carl Burke, who's site manager at Historic Halifax. I mentioned off the top the date being on the state flag, the line of First in Freedom on some of our license plates. But in the next 90 seconds or so, please expound if you have other thoughts. Where else does the Halifax Resolves live on? Where else can we see or feel or think about the legacy of this important bit of history from our state?
Well, the Halifax Resolves was an important first step. It helped lead to the Declaration of Independence, and so in so doing, it helped lead to our nation. It is what we would call a foundational document. So all of the privileges, all of the freedoms that we have got their start somewhere, and Halifax and the Halifax Resolves is a part of that story. So we're very fortunate that we have something that connects so well to really the beginning of the United States, if you will.
In addition to the Resolves, what else can people consume or experience if they head out to your historic site?
We're a wonderful small colonial era town. We have a number of restored buildings on our site. We do guided tours of those. We have a museum in the visitor center that covers Halifax, and there are different themes that are presented. The Revolution, of course, is one theme. The Resolves, of course, is one of the themes. But other ways that people sought freedom in Halifax over the years are covered. So we touch on Underground Railroad history. We touch on civil rights. We tell a broad and diverse story of the people who lived and worked and made Halifax what it was and what it is today.
Carl Burke is site manager at Historic Halifax, where the Halifax Resolves are on display until early October. The Halifax Resolves came almost 3 months before the Declaration of Independence on April 12th, 1776. Carl, thank you for all the knowledge and the history lesson here.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff Tiberi. Thank you for tuning in today. Join us again tomorrow at noon for more Due South right here on listener-supported WUNC News.
Each story you hear on Planet Money starts with a question. What happens if we refund tariffs? Why are groceries so expensive? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious, because the forces shaping our world can be hard to see. Follow NPR's Planet Money wherever you get your podcasts and start seeing how the economy really works.